Buddy, we're back again on Thursday, May 23rd. Chapo coming at you. Today, we are delving into a specific state, the state of Ohio. And joining us to help us on this tour through Ohio and its sort of canopy of political corruption is DJ Byrnes of the Ohio-based independent journalism outlet, The Rooster. DJ, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, guys. I'm looking forward to teaching you guys what a mistake you've made over the next hour or so.
Well, speaking of mistakes, let's hop into it with the state of Ohio. Now, I have to say, like, as a matter of just like establishing my bona fides here, I am the only member of the Chapo Brain Trust who is not from the Midwest.
Okay.
We've got Matt from Wisconsin, Amber from Indiana, Felix from Illinois, Chris from Ohio.
Hello, I'm here as well.
So what I want to know is, like, as I've learned more and more about the various Midwestern states, is there a specific Ohio character, like a stereotypical attitude or belief that you think exists and informs the politics of the state of Ohio? Or to ask that another way, is every corrupt state corrupt in the same way? Or is there something about the Ohio character that leads to so much interesting political corruption and malfeasance?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, your average like Ohioan is probably like, an Ohio State voter who lives in the suburbs, has some distinct opinions on January 6th. And, they don't really follow state politics at all. So the Ohio Republican Party has kind of been able to, establish this junta over us. And a lot of the thing about Ohio is a lot of these guys don't even have the decency to be interesting or professional in any sort of manner. Like there's corruption in every state. But at least in like the New York and Chicago's, they A, have the decency to be interesting, or B, are like competent at it. And very rarely do these guys our types of politicians, and this extends to both parties, really clear both bars. So it leads to a sad state of affairs as I've dedicated my last 5 years, towards blogging.
And like, how would you describe like the state of like Ohio politics, both at a state level and a national level? Like Ohio is a very large state. It's sort of like it's trending red in the last couple of presidential elections, but there's a lot of like big urban centers that are pretty reliably Democratic. But like, how would you describe the governor and state house of Ohio?
So the state house is completely gerrymandered. After John Kasich won on the Tea Party backwave, now he gets to pretend he's some sort of moderate for an MSNBC check every week. They basically just railroaded the legislator into supermajorities in both caucuses. So they can, like Matt Huffman said, they can pretty much do what they want, which leads to the type of corruption. Now, when I was coming up, I'm 37. I remember in the West Wing days, Ohio was the bellwether. We always picked the president. Things were trending up for us. Bill Clinton was king at the time. And after Obama won, like he understood what it took to win the state. He had the infrastructure, and then he had that great volunteer army basically, and he threw it in the trash so nobody else could use it. And nationally, these last couple years, it's gone towards Trump. We love Trump. We're a Trump state. It'll be, probably 10 points this time. And the Democratic Party hasn't been able to find any candidates that can relate outside of the metro areas. And our metro areas, Columbus, Cincinnati, and Cleveland, are corrupt by the lowest life form, I think, in U.S. politics, the Democratic city council person. And all our mayors are just like, the best mayor is probably in Columbus because he's not actively trying to earn a appointment in the Biden administration. But they're all just in the thrall of local real estate industries and local developers. And they're all just sort of content to rule over their little kingdoms in the urban centers and not really challenge or educate people to what's going on in the state, because they're also invested in a low interest, low turnout elections themselves. so it's a disaster.
The difference between cities in Ohio and, a truly global city like New York City is that our mayor, Eric Adams, is definitely in the pocket of New York City-based real estate developers.
For sure.
But also Turkish construction firms.
Yeah, and it goes back to, it's the same in Ohio. It's on the national politics. Their extremists are like these radical drunken preachers who want to strip abortion care and like wouldn't really care if people were BLM protesters were mowed over by, Ford 350s in the middle of the street. They wouldn't. Those are their extremists. Our extremists, like, Sherrod Brown, he's like, painted this radical and like people saying it's progressive. He won't even say the word abortion. So it's tough. It's. I feel like the Overton window, I believe is the phrase. I feel it's shifting in their direction, but I could be wrong.
Well, let's get into some local news out of the state of Ohio, and local news about political corruption. That's always fun to learn about. And I would say, like the biggest scandal going on in the state of Ohio right now, or like the biggest one, is the HB6 scandal, or the Ohio nuclear bribery scandal. And what I love about this scandal is that, like, describing it as the nuclear bribery scandal is great. Is great because it describes it literally and sort of poetically. There is a nuclear level of bribery and corruption here, but about a nuclear energy company. So, could you give us also correct me if I'm, because I'm reading about this, I got a little confused. Is there not one but two suicides associated with this bribery scandal?
Yeah. So the thing about Ohio, like, it's Republicans, right? And you would think they all vote in lockstep, and they do when it comes to doing, transgender hate crimes and stuff of that nature. But over the last course of about 4 or 5 years now, there's been a civil war between the Holy Roller faction in the House and like the union, like the pro-union, such as they are, not really and the old school Republicans have been like a holy war. So that's led to like corruption, and It was a civil war between Larry Householder and this guy, Ryan Smith, who, for all Ryan Smith's faults, he would have done right to work, but he wasn't corrupt in this nature. Larry Householder, his previous stint as speaker had ended in a cloud of investigation, a FBI investigation about campaign finances. And they basically didn't have the technology to get him. And especially, like, there's multiple state legislators in Ohio that have been caught on tape accepting a bribe like by the FBI. Like, that's the gold standard.
Well, there's perhaps one Ohio politician who is recorded by the FBI having sex with a Chinese spy.
Yeah, our former mayor, Columbus former mayor. Yeah,
we will get to this the Fang saga.
And so it was Larry Householder, and one of his big thing, all the energy companies. I was a state house candidate in MAGA country this year. All the energy conglomerates like AP, First Energy, these fossil fuel interests, all these hobgoblins are coming out and they're funneling money towards Larry Householder's people. Well, Larry Householder, he ended up winning the speaker, won the Civil War with the help of 10 Democrats, or 11, I believe. Democrats joined in like a bipartisan coalition to elect this guy. And it was corrupt. They were bailing out 2 decrepit nuclear plants and 2 coal plants, which one's in southeastern Ohio and one's in Indiana. So we're writing these checks to an Indiana coal plant. And it was just super shady. The press was on, and it reeked. Like, I've talked to numerous state Republicans that, why didn't you vote for this? Because it reeked. It was bad. And like in Ohio politics, for it to reek, where you're like putting out, where you need to go get Democratic votes to do something outside your caucus, like bipartisanship generally in Ohio, it's red alert. And they got this legislation through. It went through the Senate, went through the PUCO board, gets passed. And it gets passed. Larry Householder thinks he's the king. He's going to make himself speaker for the next 16 years, redo our term limits. And the FBI raids his hemp farm down in southeastern Ohio. His wife barricades the door. She's like, "You're not coming in." They finally talk her down, because they're white, country folk with some sort of money. They're not going to come in blasting. And they arrest him. And then it turns out they indicted him, a key lobbyist, Neil Clark, who was just legendary in his corruption, and a couple other stooges. All the stooges except Larry Householder plead guilty. Neil Clark, the super corrupt lobbyist, he's like going down. Like, he's been corrupt forever. He was under investigation prior to this. He kills himself, or he dies by suicide, rather. I'm sorry. By a retention pond in Florida. Him and his wife had got up that day, had their conversation, said what they were going to do. She leaves. He goes to the closet, changes into a Mike DeWine for governor campaign T-shirt, drives out to a retention pond, shoots himself, and then gets discovered by like a jogger that day. So dies. And then he writes a tell-all book. He leaves a tell-all book. It's like, I'm just the governor. He implicates the unions. He implicates Mike DeWine. He outs like politicians for like having abortions and mental health crises and stuff. And like, this guy, he was prone to exaggeration and hyperbole, but he wasn't a stone cold liar. And all his predictions have come true. And since then, years later, the federal investigators indicted a guy named Sam Randazzo, who was our PUCO chairman, Public Board of Utilities chairman. 4 days before he accepted the offer, he accepted a $4.3 million bribe from First Energy that he called cleaning up a consulting contract. Gets appointed 4 days later. This guy was like dead in the water, was not like everybody was, even Republicans were like, this guy is just so corrupt. Like, what are we doing here? DeWine and the lieutenant governor, especially our lieutenant governor, were instrumental in doing what was later be called battlefield triage to get this guy installed on the PUCO chairmanship. And so he got indicted by the feds. And then a couple months later, the state finally was like, okay, we might as well get into this. They indicted Randazzo too, and then they indicted 2 First Energy executives. Well, then Randazzo, he had his assets frozen, was fighting, had a multi-million-dollar house in Naples, house in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Columbus. He hangs himself in a warehouse that was listed as a front for one of his companies that he was stealing money from his energy conglomerate clients and funneling it through this company where he hung himself.
That's pretty polite. I mean,
yeah.
He wasn't doing it in a warehouse that anyone was using.
Yeah.
He wasn't doing it. He wasn't doing it in like an IKEA that people, like couples go to.
I mean,
I think he sounds like a pretty good guy.
Yeah. And there have been people come out and, he's a good guy. Like, he really cared. And it's like, this guy was like, he was a brilliant guy. He was the rare one of the ones that wasn't a dumbass. And he could have done a lot of anything. He had a very nice lifestyle, and he just couldn't stop ripping off people. And I always say, like, when guys in Ohio politics buy a house in Naples, they should be automatically flawed by the IRS. These guys love Naples. Like, if they had $1 billion, they would be living in Naples.
Is it the no state income tax?
It's one of the only places outside of Ohio that has a skyline.
Yeah. And so it's an ongoing investigation, right? And there's a lot. Our lieutenant governor is in it, and they're kind of waiting. And it's gone from this story where, like, it was just your standard House Speaker doing corruption, going to prison for 20 years, took it all the way to trial, went to 20 years, to now these executives are indicted. There's one guy in particular, Michael Dowling, who is First Energy's vice president of bribes. He is like the bridge between the corporate world and the political world. He got fired as soon as Larry Householder got arrested, but now First Energy is paying for his legal defense because and it just came out today, actually a couple hours ago, that First Energy investors, as part of the lawsuit, want to depose our governor. So it goes, in my opinion, it goes all the way to the top. With Mike DeWine, who just does this, I'm an all country bumpkin kind of guy, but like, he looks like a sleepy tea grandpa, but he's he's one of the most,
he should be wearing one of those Victorian sleeping caps, and it's not because of any of the FBI. The FBI arrested Householder, but it's a lot of the best stuff is coming from these lawsuits of the stakeholders are finally doing, or the shareholders are finally doing something. And they're invested in pensions, and they're like, they want to go after these guys. Like, what did you know? And the best part about this scandal is it was boomers doing cybercrime on unencrypted apps. Like, these guys, they live in a culture. I've developed a major kink for it, brother. And they lived in a world where the largest bribery scheme, at the end of the day, it was a $1 trillion extortion scheme on public ratepayers in Ohio. And these guys it was just another day at the office to them. And they were texting, they were celebrating. They've got them texting, sending memes of each other after they passed, texting bottles of Pappy Van Winkle saying we're out with the state legislators. Like, these guys. So this is like obviously these guys have never seen the television series The Wire.
No,
because this is like
they have no culture.
Are you doing memes about an ongoing criminal fucking conspiracy?
It was literally Mount Rushmore with 4 of their faces, public 2 First Energy lobbyists, their chief executives have been indicted, and Sam Randazzo. And it said HB6 at the top. It was like an old school Imager meme, and it said HB6 at the top. It was like, fuck anyone who ain't us. And since then, 3 of them have been indicted. One of them has hanged himself, and it's going to be on Netflix one day.
Yeah.
But it just goes back, like, you can connect that to, I mean, you don't just get up one day and be like, I'm going to rob a bank, right? Like that's a culmination of events. And so it's not like this stuff just popped out of the air. It's just Ohio is, Louisiana, I think gets the national shine as they should. But Ohio can go punch for punch. I'm telling you.
go band for band with First Energy or whatever Louisiana's up to. But okay, so basically, like the electric utility company First Energy paid $60 million to Generation Now, which is a 501c4 organization controlled by the Speaker of the Ohio House, who was Larry Householder.
Yep.
And I gotta say, what an amazing example of nominative determinism that the Speaker of the Ohio House was named Larry Householder.
Right.
It should have been like, if his name was like Larry Political Corruption Doer, like that would be a little bit too on the nose. But Larry Householder. Yeah. So Mike DeWine is being deposed as part of the shareholder lawsuits, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, I would just say you point out how easy what I hate about this thing. It's so easy to sound like a crackpot conspiracy theorist. Like it's your standard, everybody, because like everybody understands a politician being corrupt. Like everybody's like, oh, I get that. But like you start getting into it, like 501(c)(4)s, Generation Now, controlled by an ominous figure named Larry Householder. It's just very easy to sound like a crackpot.
Well, I want to get into the guy Neil Clark. This was the first suicide connected to this, and he been sort of had a rep. The Times did a profile of him, where he says the most powerful lobbyist in Ohio, described as the godfather of lobbyists, a super lobbyist, and a bully. But he also really liked to play up his familial, like his Sicilian heritage, and his father's like reputed ties to like the Cleveland outfit, or like he was a soldier for like the Cleveland Mafia or something. But like obviously he didn't learn enough about how to do crimes from his dad.
Yeah, like a quote I've used from one of my friends is like, before I got in this game, I thought you had to like work for a corporation to be a lobbyist. Like you can just go up there and like anyone can be a lobbyist. And one of them guy was like, you just learn people's names, learn the names, the titles, the faces, and they're like number one piece of legislation. And then you just walk up to them and you're like, hey, so-and-so, great job on, Save the Dogs Act. I really like that one. He's like, you do that for about 2 to 3 weeks, you can become, you can pass any sort of law up here.
Yeah, state legislators are like arena football players. Yeah. Like they're just so happy that you like know their names.
They love it, dude. Like they love it. And it leads to a lot of trouble down in Columbus because they treat Columbus as like this, big city because these guys are coming from like villages of like 300 people, and it's a bad state of affairs. But Neil Clark, he was just one of those old school guys that kind of came up in the game, and he treated politics as a blood sport. Like he plays up the story about, my dad was a Sicilian. It was like, well, okay, what were you doing? Like, and he claims him and his dad had some falling out. I think that's a little bit of a tall tale on his part, but he was right in the thick of corruption. His big thing was they were messing with sports betting. I'm sorry, between the bidding with the casino commission and the lottery commission, and who should like control that. And he was also into mosaic art in his spare time. There's like a YouTube where he's did 4 mosaic glass arts of Marilyn Manson. So he was like a 1950s style like pervert. Like used to buy like Playboys at the gas station, but he got into mosaic art. And I wish I was an alcoholic, drunk during that time, still writing, but I wasn't as serious as I am. And everybody says we would have got along, but I don't. But at the end of the day, I don't respect the guys that are. Because it's like in China, you can like enrich yourself, but if you do it at the expense of common people, General Z is going to execute.
They'll execute you. Yeah, they'll just kill
and
you.
These guys are not even. They're taking their slice, but they're also doing it at like the expense of other people, and that's what just really drives me crazy.
Well, what were the knock-on effects of this crooked like bribery for terms of First Energy? But what were the knock-on effects for like the Ohio energy consumer? Like were they like propping up these failing power plants, and also like undermining any kind of like renewable energy as well?
Yeah, the HB6 also, besides being the worst energy policy ever in the 21st century, as the luminaries at Vox called it, it also gutted green energy regulation and like stipulations and like investments in that. And so these guys are just completely in the tank for fossil fuels. And like we should be leading in wind, solar farms, harnessing Lake Erie. And our fossil fuel companies are like actively investing in just astroturf organizations to convince people that like wind terminals cause cancer. Solar power is a Chinese plot. It's serious. And they go into these villages where these projects are trying to come in, and they pump, and they find these astroturf organizations and a bunch of cranks to go in there and stir it up. And if you come, I guarantee you, we pay more for electric in Columbus than you guys do on the coast because of just the regulation. We put even Randazzo, who is fabulously corrupt. Like everybody's like, well, yeah, okay, he took a bribe, but it's like, just what did you expect him to do other than completely be in the pocket for the fossil fuel industries he was supposed to regulate? Like, why wouldn't he be trying to make their job easier? That's the job. And it doesn't sound well for our long-term future.
Well, I mean, you mentioned some of the like sort of counter messaging around renewable energy, and I came across this thing about how there's a quote here. It says, HB6 has grown increasingly unpopular as it made its way through the legislature. Polling shows the more we explain the bill, the worse it does. And then it says, there were television commercials and mailers advancing outlandish claims that played on the presumed xenophobia of Ohioans.
Yeah.
Don't give the Chinese government your personal information, email, cell phone, or address, or sign your name on their petition. Then there's a phenomenon of sort of counter petitioners, counter canvassers. It says there were the street level tactics, the most extreme of which were the blockers. One day, Tyler Furman, a local political operative helping to manage the signature drive, received a call from his mother, whom he had hired to collect signatures. She was calling him from a public library in suburban Columbus. Moments earlier, she told him, while she was canvassing outside, she had found herself surrounded by 3 blockers. Counter canvassers talking over her and yelling at passersby not to sign her petition. Furman drove to the library and told his mother to stay inside, hoping the blockers would disperse. Instead, they got into a nearby car and waited. Furman, worried that they planned to follow his mother, pulled his car in front of their parking space, boxing it in while his mother made her escape from the library.
Yeah, that's not a tall tale either, because Furman blew the whistle on it. Furman was like one of the original guys to go to the FBI and was like, this is crazy, because after they passed it, there was an effort to recall it, and they got basically a bunch of henchmen together. And they sent out a bunch of racist mailers. Like, I would love to see what China polls in Ohio. Like, Sherrod Brown's running anti-China. We're just so scared of the Chinese, you know what I mean? So they put out a bunch of racist mailers out to the sticks, and then they hired a bunch of henchmen to go out and intimidate these, like, suburban wine mobs who are just, like, trying to do democracy. That's the only thing they're trying to do.
It's literally Hans Moleman from The Simpsons at the clean energy booth as the goons come in and turn it into support our fossil fuels.
Yeah.
So this stuff really works?
Certainly does.
Oh, well, lots of luck. Oh!
Yeah, and they got it. The FBI got all that. They got in trouble for that. And now it's just pretty much waiting for the shoe to drop on it.
Well, I mean, to go back to Neil Clark and his suicide, that he before he killed himself, he changed into a Mike DeWine for Governor shirt, and then left behind this memoir, this manuscript titled "A Sicilian Never Forgets," which you say has had some level of predictive power. But like, okay, what do you make of the Mike DeWine T-shirt? Was this his sort of like? I would assume it is his sort of like final stroke, his swan song, with aiming something directly at the governor.
So everybody, I've asked probably 100 people, like anytime I talk to somebody up in the state hall, like, talk about Neil Clark, wherever it comes up, I'm always like, hey, do you think it was a coincidence that Neil Clark chose to die in a DeWine for Governor shirt? And nobody, it's always been an instantaneous no, I don't. Like, Neil was a lot of things, but he was like methodical. And, like the first third of the book is just like him, basically verifying that he's had sex. He wants people to know that.
Are there photos?
He wants people to know, like, I didn't die a virgin. I had a lot of sex. And then he gets into it. And Mike DeWine he's been everything. I mean, he goes all the way back to the Iran-Contra trials when he was falling asleep during the hearings. He's been every sort of successful wave, and this was supposed to be his capstone, his like coup de grace. And because he's like an old school, he's professional, and he does it basically through patronage and taking care of his people. And since then, I mean, I've got an article on my blog called, Mike DeWine is guilty as hell. And that's just what timelines. He meets with Larry Householder, 3 days before they're sworn in. They have a meeting at the governor's mansion. Those three, and the topic, all that's mentioned, it was energy policy. First Energy donates $100,000 to his daughter's Greene County, this like suburban, not even suburban, this rural county. Nobody, 80,000 people live there. $100,000 for the prosecutor race that he lost. He had this guy, his chief of staff has been subpoenaed. They want to talk. Already admitted that she knew about the bribe, that she knew Randazzo had taken $4.3 million from First Energy. And then those emails between First Energy executives on the day of the HB6 vote arranged for the state plane to go to Chicago to pick up a few key votes. And the First Energy executives, they send emails and like, who scrambled the state plane? Mike Dawson's wife. Mike Dawson's a lobbyist. His wife is Laurel Dawson, the longtime chief of staff for Mike DeWine. So it goes all the way to the top.
So they sent a plane to Chicago to pick up votes. Yep. What was this? The Cook County Cemetery? What was going on with that?
Yeah. They got it in. They were celebrating, and it was complete blood sport. Like everybody saw it coming, knew it was coming down, and they were just going all the way like to the end. And they got it at the end of the day. They couldn't have done it without everybody involved. They corrupted every single state power we have against them. Like it's described to me as like First Energy is an organized crime family that sells energy on the side. Like they literally had a vice president of bribes. And it's these guys, they Neil Clark called them the bank. I mean, our Lieutenant Governor, John Husted, who's probably going to be our governor unless he gets indicted. He's like their golden boy. Like everybody just acknowledges their just corrupt influence on our state politics. And they completely subjugated every lever of power. It was a complete failure from the Democratic minority all the way up to the top to our governor. Now, do I think Mike DeWine's going to go to handcuffs one day? I mean, maybe in my porn dreams, but I don't. I don't feel we live in that country where guys like DeWine go to prison. Now, our lieutenant governor,
maybe we would if we stopped being so afraid of China and just let them take over this country.
Those Chinese. Sherrod Brown's about that's going to be his whole campaign. All those tariffs.
What to the voters of Ohio it like about China? Is it about like the tariffs on like auto imports or is it just China's doing too good at industrial policy? So we're like, we have to like sanction them for like breaking the rules by making.
Imagine what an efficient Chinese bureaucrat could do with the state of Ohio.
Oh my God. I wish, I send him letters every month, like General Z, all we need is a couple airplanes. Our National Guard is just, they're groypers who just post memes. They're right for the taking. You could have Ohio, America's 7th most populous state in your pocket. But I think a lot of it is that, when I came from a little city called Marion, City of Kings, as I call it. But it's just your typical post-industrial town that never envisioned, the heydays of manufacturing go away. And when it didn't, or when they did, there was no economic plan for that. And then, by the way, here comes an avalanche of pain pills, thanks to the executive class that sees you guys just as a bunch of pain pill addicted hillbillies. And so that went away. And there's just a lot of resentment in Ohio. And, I give Trump, obviously I'll see Trump voters in hell, but I give them credit here for at least they know they're supposed to be angry.
Right.
And now it's like, the famous Lyndon Johnson quote about you give the white man somebody to look down on. And the Chinese play into that, the dictatorship. And then like you also have Sherrod Brown and the MSNBC crowd. It's like, well, the Chinese don't play fair. Like our market, like Wall Street, our market, like we've played fair ever in our lives. And now because they have like electric vehicles that cost $9,000 that you're just better than anything our state's produced in the last 20 years. Wait a second.
Would you rather have a $9,000 Chinese made EV or like $100,000 Cybertruck that like doesn't work and kills you?
Right. And so I think there's just a lot of resentment, especially in the rural areas where like, the decline of newspapers, it hurt cities like Columbus and the big cities, obviously. But it also hurt these places like where I'm from, Marion, Mansfield, Dayton, Toledo, these other like mid-sized cities, because they just become such like information deserts where like the average American isn't even going to know about it, or the average Ohioan doesn't even know about the Chinese $9,000 electric vehicle, because they just get spoon-fed a bunch of nonsense from both sides, really. From both sides.
Well, to move on from the HB6 scandal, I want to talk about an individual, a Cincinnati city councilman. Man, this is quite a saga with this guy. But okay, Jeff Pastor. How many political affiliations, religions, and sexual orientations has this guy cycled through in his career?
It's Pastor, man. He was a character. I'll give him this. He was at least a character. You know what I mean? He cleared the character bar. He was halfway there. And he just, at the end of the day, just couldn't do anything besides be fabulously corrupt. Again, and Cincinnati's another city that's just old school corruption. And he was so devious, he caught himself up in a web instantly. Like, I'm not even sure he got through his first term before they were like, And he was, my understanding, Chris could correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is he was like basically like laundering money like through the churches, and he had some setup with his donations and the churches, and it was like some tax-free racket. And yeah, he thought he had it figured out, but the FBI was ahead of him every step of the way.
What I like about Jeff Pastor is like similar to Neil Clark. He has a good deal of writing, and like so he wrote this like manifesto that he published on like his own website, where he comes out as a Black Jewish Republican polyamorous atheist, where in it, like, he really wants you to know that, like, even though as a young man I was a virgin who didn't have sex, I've been having a lot of sex recently. And I sort of read from this. It says, while attending Withrow High School, I would carry my Bible and briefcase, much to the shock of my peers. There is no way you can be that young and that on fire for the Lord. I was a virgin who did not use curse words or experiment with drugs and alcohol, and who feverishly battled against sexually lustful and hateful thoughts. I was on my way to get my reward. Trouble began after graduation. Puberty began too. How did this guy go through puberty after he graduated high school? Is that what's going on here? He's behind the curve. Yeah,
maybe, bro. The young Republicans, you gotta watch out for the young Republicans. Like, it's a freakish breed, especially when you get into like southwestern Ohio and the religious influence there. That they could make you can make a Righteous Gemstones documentary on like the southwestern Ohio, like conservative Christian culture, I guess.
Yeah, set it at the classic Touchdown Jesus Church, where the 50-foot high Jesus statue got struck by lightning and burned down, and they just replaced it with another one.
That's what New York should have done after 9/11, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, I love this manifesto because he says 2001 to 2010 would change my life forever. I will try to summarize the 9 years this way: the best ride of my life. 2001, I arrived as a chaste 17-year-old Pentecostal from Cincinnati. I left 2005, a Pentecostal kid at 21, with a precious little 4-month-old baby girl. Between 2001 and 2005, I had to get to know the Lord for myself. I did not deviate too far from the well-beaten path, though. I became human. Losing my virginity happened. I attended my first campus party in 2003, my first party in my teenage young adult life, by the way, but I still did not drink or smoke the devil's grass. And to that, I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed that like he went from attending his first ever party to losing his virginity in like an hour.
Yeah,
I feel like this guy's got some riz, if that's the case.
That's the standard like holy roller arc. That's why they lobby against like public schools, and they're trying to turn the universities into like anti-woke factories. It's because their kids, like, they have them on the straight and narrow until they lose their virginity and have like one bush light at a party, and they're like, fuck this noise. And they're like grandparents, and their parents back home are like, they blame it on like woke cultural factories. And,
yeah, but what were they doing when they were teenagers?
Oh, probably the same thing.
Yeah, the exact same thing. They were getting drunk and having sex out of marriage.
At least we weren't gay.
Yeah, well.
And they just become that's the standard. Half of them end up like that. A third of them are normal, and then whatever chump change left. I'm from I can't do that math or fraction. Whatever's left, they go into like government and trying to like instill their holy roller government on the rest of us.
Now, Chris, Jeff Passer wasn't the corrupt Ohio politician that you went to high school with, right?
No, I went to high school with the opposite type of him, a guy named P.G. Sittenfeld, who was the senior class president when I was a freshman, who, look, he wasn't like a bad guy or a bully, but he was just a guy who you could tell was like, I am going to be a senator from the age of 17, like wearing suspenders and a bow tie in his senior class photo, just like pink Oxford shirt, the like preppy belt that was in fashion there. That was like the neon
sort of
green.
Braided, the braided belt?
Yeah, the braided belt. Like, whole thing. Like, this guy just radiated, like, I want to be a politician from the time he was born. And he did. And now he's in jail.
He's out right now.
He's out? Did he get out?
His rich family got him on appeal. He's awaiting his appeal. He had like also, John Ashcroft, George W. Bush's attorney general, writing letters to the judge being like, please take it easy on my corrupt politician friend.
Yeah. Also important to note that his sister is Curtis Sittenfeld, who wrote the Rodham book about if Hillary never met Bill and her life was good. The Hillary Clinton fan fiction novel.
That family needs to be under investigation, bro. Like those are the most they have the mayor cheat disease, like has been thinking about himself being president from like year end, like student government, red flag, like you're out of there. Like, yeah, he was treated as some like rising star. He ran for Senate, like primary loss, and he was like going to be like their golden boy.
Yeah.
And he would be mayor right now if he could literally turn down the most obviously corrupt bribe of all time.
In perfect that kind of guy style, like I'd been just kind of like watching his career for a while, and I followed him on Twitter, and he was the perfect kind of local Democratic politician where I followed him for the better part of a decade online, and if I didn't go to his site and know that he was registered Democrat, I would not know his political affiliation from his public statements. It's basically like nothing more than like, we love our small businesses and communities.
Yeah, the woke right wing, honestly, when you boil it down to it, when you ask, that's what I say, that the word progressive has just become so bankrupted in this country, at least in Ohio. And it's like, what exactly is democratic about you, brother?
Yeah.
That you won't say slurs in public. Like, that's about the most you can ask from these guys, because they're the same on all the levels. It's tax abatements for the developers, which they're pro good developer, but that entire process is corrupt. They abate the local schools. The public schools are a disaster in every city, big city. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So they basically got rolled up by the FBI for having undercover FBI agents just offer them money to take, like, I think for PG it was like $40,000 to take preferential votes on the city council. But wasn't there something else with the agents themselves where they almost fucked up the very easy transfer that they were trying to get these guys on, the very easy sting?
They must have sent like two hillbillies or something, because they're like, yeah, they testified at the trial, like, we got to shop at the FBI store. And so they rolled up. So they probably rolled up, like looking like drug dealers, like an ostentatious car, flowing money around, or in Miami Vice, like, look at us, we're like the big shots, all this seized wealth from like drug dealers. And it was so like his circle, the mayor's former chief of staff was like saying, hey man, like, this doesn't seem right. Like, the people I know with money, they're not like rolling up like teens drunk, their dad's car to high school prom. It's just something doesn't go right. And he couldn't turn it down. Like, at that point, he was just such a and people like behind the scenes of this trial just said he was relentless. Like, he started out with like this whole promise, and then it seemed like, okay, you're kind of tenacious about some of this stuff. And it's like, oh, okay, this guy is like clearly being a jackal about these things. And all he had to do was turn down that most obvious bribe in the world on the advice of his entire inner circle, and he couldn't do it. And now he should be in jail. I think he only got like a 3-year sentence. Like, it's not low security prison, like, whatever, man. And then he's got this rich family, and John Ashcroft is writing him memos, and like,
wait, John Ashcroft is writing a memo to keep a Democratic politician out of prison for taking $40,000 in bribes from undercover FBI agents.
It's ironic because Sittenfeld And Larry Householder pretty much had the same defense. I mean, Householder had a clown cabal as lawyers because he was broke, but like Sittenfeld had a competent defense. And it was basic. Their defense was like, this is just a day in politics. This is politics. This is how it works in the Citizens United. There's no bag of cash on video. There's no like explicit, like, this is a bribe. My name is PG Sittenfeld. This is a bribe. I'm doing this 100% for the money. And they both went 0 for 2.
That was the sense that I got when I was reading about this scandal. This all happened in like 2020, and they arrested a third city council member from Cincinnati as well. And it really did have the sense that everybody in there, whether they were kind of a kook like Pastor, who has a more bizarre life story, or a super professional like success track guy like PG, it's just like in the council office, it was like, oh, this is just how business gets done. You take a $20,000 check from somebody and you take the vote. Like this is just playing the game.
Once again, I return to The Wire. I'll take any motherfucker's money if he's giving it away. And I just love the idea about like these undercover FBI agents who had to like pretend to be something other than just government bureaucrats. Like, I'm just imagining them wearing like FUBU jumpsuits, like white guys wearing FUBU tracksuits, but it says like "For Us" by investigation or something like that. FUBI.
Yeah, they probably felt like we're on the wire now.
Yeah.
You know, and really they're just going. And Cincinnati and Cleveland, they're old school in their corruption. Like it's like a professional kind of like old school racket, where Columbus they're starting to be division. It's more unified in Columbus. There's one team in Columbus, and we're like the city that's coming up now. That didn't have the industrial might, and we're like, you know, trying to turn ourselves into like the Silicon Valley of the Midwest. And yeah, it's not a good situation.
Well, you mentioned Ohio's school and education system, and I was wondering if you could talk about the ECOT, or Electronic Classroom of Tomorrow scandal. Because I love the names. Well, the Electronic Classroom of Tomorrow. Yeah, sounds actually sounds better than what it actually is, which is somehow even worse than what this implies. Yeah. It's like basically like corruption involving like a Zoom only charter school.
Yeah. So Ohio is on the forefront. Like when I went to school, Ohio was like 5th in the nation in public education. Very good public education. And our Republican state legislators were obviously like, well, this isn't going to do.
This simply will not stand.
And so we have been on the forefront of the public handout to private schools and later these charter schools and stuff. Like in Ohio, we're the only state in the country where like if a kid goes to private school, the public school has to bus that private school kid to that private school. Even if there's just one of them, they have to bus that kid to his school and incur those expenses. And we've been on the forefront of this charter explosion, and which is basically nothing more than just rich handouts to parents who are already sending their children to private schools. And ECOT was basically the first idea that like, hey, we can do this charter school online. And I know a lot of people that work there. My mom, actually, she put herself through, after my parents got divorced after 20 years, she put herself through school. Her first job out of school, master's, was like teaching in this environment. And even she knew it wasn't right. And basically they were running this scam where they were inflating their enrollment numbers. And basically they got so greedy and so excessive that they couldn't keep it up. Like the Ponzi scheme couldn't keep feeding itself. And as soon as the state was like, okay, we need you to like verify, you know, some of this information. And at this point they had been awarded accounting awards from our state auditor, donated to every Republican in the book, greased the whole way into existence. They basically were like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. We'll get right back to you. Hung up the phone and basically hit the golden parachute button, liquidated, shut down in the middle of the school year, threw tens of thousands of kids out into the wilderness, basically, in the middle of the school year, didn't have any records for them. It was like these kids might as well come from another country with no academic background. There was no record of them. And at top of it, it ended up being an $800 million swindle for this private. Bill Lager was his name. He was like this guy who just had this idea, you know, for the Electronic Classroom of Tomorrow. And what a great idea it was. And, you know, they had the students had the max and stuff, and they weren't verifying any of the enrollment. And it was $800 million, I think, was the final damage. They've been sued for about $200 million, I think, of that. Not seen a penny. Bill Lager is living in this big mansion that he bought when he was CEO down in Florida, probably in Naples.
In Naples, yeah.
I haven't checked. He's down in Florida, just hanging out. There was no criminal charges ever brought. Nothing was bought it. And then it was 2008. That was 2018. That was like, Democrats tried to make hay of this issue. And every single person involved in that scandal earned a political promotion that year. Mike DeWine, Attorney General, Governor. John Husted, Senate the President, and then he was the Senate President when it passed. Secretary of State. He became Lieutenant Governor. Dave Yost, who was our Ohio auditor, gave these guys an accounting award, had a banquet for him and everything, handed him an accounting award. He's our Attorney General, and likely he could be our next governor. And there is just no bottom to it because there's just no corruption at all. Because a state senator told me one time that all 90% of voters only care about who's the president is.
Yeah,
and they've got this super majority, and they've got this super majority where the election, where like 80% of the seats are decided, in primary season. They know they can't be touched, and their voters just don't have they can't get enough of it. They can't get enough of it unless we're voting on specific issues like abortion or weed, and the hog voters can rise up. We're okay there. But the second is it involves Republican versus Democrat. These guys, they don't care. As long as the woke mob is being kept at bay, they don't care about this standard corruption because they politics is corrupt. What are you going to do? Might as well get my Ford 350 and go blow some diesel.
I saw one statistic here. It says the electronic classroom of tomorrow had the lowest on-time graduation rate of all high schools in the country, despite its large graduating class size. Yeah. I mean, this is like the Iraq War of education scandals. Because it was a complete failure.
Seriously.
But everyone involved with it got promoted.
And we've expanded the charter schools now. So it's like now, no matter, unless you make like more than $400,000 a year or whatever, some insane cutoff, you can get school vouchers to send your kid to private and charter schools. And now all these privates and charter schools have raised their tuition to those exact amounts and are pressuring parents. Like, even if you can afford it, we want you to take that money. It's at the forefront. Now they're trying to get vouchers in Texas and Tennessee, both Republican state. And I think they fought like hell to keep those vouchers out for at least this session. But it's a Koch brothers big thing. And then there's this Corey DeAngelis freak who kind of goes around the city or goes around the country and like attacks teachers unions. And it's a mess.
Speaking of attacking teachers unions, let's talk about a story that you just recently broke concerning a Columbus City School Board member named Brandon Simmons. And now this guy is described as, you described him as an alleged drunk driver, but he basically he created this like insane anti-union manifesto that was like, I'm sorry, I got to read here from like his bullet point strategies. The plan lists 3 goals. You write, number 1, this is his writing. Number 1, dominate the boardroom. Number 2, climb out of the communications deficit. Number 3, assert our vision for CCS above all competing views. But that sounds stupid, but also contained in this manifesto was his strategy of basically fomenting racial animosity between teachers and the school support staff. Could you go into that?
Yeah, so it's as you describe, like another perfect example of how our public system is a mess because of these abatements. And our teachers went on strike in 2023, I want to say, earned some upgrades and stuff. And now the school, we're expanding all over. We're one of the fastest growing metropolitan areas in America. And yet our schools don't have enough money to stay in business. And they're pushing this consolidation plan where they've got 9 scenarios that will basically close 20 schools at all levels of education and consolidate. And obviously, the parents hate it because schools will be further away. And the teachers were involved until it became clear that hey, this is about closing schools and draining union power. I mean, these are union jobs that are going to just go away, not coming back. And so the union president resigned from that task force. And basically this Brandon Simmons, who is party endorsed by the local party, 22 years old, has the aforementioned mayor cheat disease, where he's just one of those perverts that has thought a whole lot about him being president at a very early age. And he crafted this I mean, a highly illegal anti-union hobgoblin plan where it caused for like fomenting racial divisions between the teachers and the support staff, support staff union, put those racial cards on the table, talking about how if they wanted to meet the union, it was going to be on their terms. They were going to invite them to their building, let them get settled in the boardroom, wait 10 minutes, and then move the teachers into another room where there was reduced public seating. And oh, by the way, we've also stacked public comment against you. And it was basically just in writing on how they plan to break this union, smear them in public, and, keep it going. And Brandon Simmons has taken the ride for it. But now it's a matter of, who else knew it? Like, this was a public document. This wasn't leaked. This is a public document. Simmons came out and said other people were involved. He didn't name anybody. But there was one member who got shared with, Sarah Ingalls, another who was a freshman member just like Simmons, but she actually has a union background and actually has principles. And she got it, and she admitted to it today. Like, she saw it, and as soon as she saw it, she took pictures of it on her phone and leaked it to the teachers union. And then the teachers union shared it with me. I was the one that broke the story. And so now there's going to be this huge fallout. They've tabled this plan. They had a bunch of public comment plans. Comment sessions planned tonight or yesterday and tonight. They canceled those. And now the union has come out and they've said, okay, well, this is great, but this is dated May 10th. And you guys have already used some of these tactics against us. You've already stacked the deck. You've already moved. You've already moved the meeting of negotiations at the last second. Like, you've already done this stuff. So we're like, we want you have like 24 hours to legally notify us how it's happened. Everybody's, put in their public records requests because while Brandon Simmons definitely was probably the one dumb enough to present it and they might have let him think it was this idea, his idea. This was sort of a trial balloon that was probably written by a couple other members, definitely had influence with our business community leaders. I can almost guarantee because, the head of the board, by the way, is or the task force is like a well-known out-of-state developer who now has insight, who now has leverage in these negotiations. So it's a standard typical story of just Democratic rule in Columbus, and they just haven't been able to fix this school system for 40 years. I mean, we didn't integrate our school district until 1980.
That seems a little behind the curve.
Yeah. We're celebrating, Brown versus Brown versus Board of Education. Like, it was like a unanimous decision. They fought that ruling for 90 years. And then one of the guys, he was a former state school board president, Dave Dobos from Columbus, Republican. He said he had an MIT degree. He's in the state legislature. He got exposed by Cleveland.com for lying about having an MIT degree. He went, but he never passed. And he was on the school board for multiple years. And it's just where it's for the local machine, where it's just this thankless job where they find these like gremlins. Like, that's how far down it's gone. The job has been so dilapidated that they could find a 22-year-old in a city, in a city of 800,000 people. They could only find a 22-year-old that actually wanted to do this job. And then they also hook them up with like jobs with nonprofits in the city that depend on money from the city. They make them go hire these gremlins. And like Simmons, he got hooked up with like some $80,000 job. He's never had work before.
Well,
Told the paper he was taking an extended gap year. Got a $68,000 job at a nonprofit as thanks for being a board member and towing the line. And now it's going to be a whole nother mess and scandal that just makes
at 22 years old, like your memories of your academic career are still fresh in your mind. So maybe he just really hates teachers. Maybe he just really hates homework.
Yeah. I mean, I was doing worse stuff. I mean, I guess I wasn't doing as productive stuff at that age, but it's like, man, you should like be out doing something a lot cooler than like trying to bust unions and be some, show what a hobgoblin you are. But yeah, they got him out of the paint. They threw him completely under the bus at the next meeting. They read this statement saying he's the one that did it. He got up and left. He got cornered by the local media, walked off into a locked door. He couldn't get back into the meeting. Had to come back out and give like another press conference. At which point he threw other people under the bus without naming them and was like, okay, I'm going to walk this way. Like, please don't block me. And then he just like walked off into a parking lot and hasn't been you know, and you talk to people about him and they're like, yeah, like, you know, he shows up to these meetings, he like gets drunk and then he leaves, no ride share. And our bus system, like our buses stop at 10. Like it's absolutely shambolic. Like
He's still walking home.
I would kill for the public transit of like Estonia. And, you know, but like, yeah, he just rolls out and it's just like a normal thing, you know, and like, and our city council there's been one member that's even tweeted about it. Like, this is a baseline activity. It shouldn't even be a test for a so-called progressive Democratic council. And they won't even tweet about it. Like, I'm going to have to go down there and yell at them for them to even, like, acknowledge it. And then they're going to act like I'm just some crank off the street who, like, you know, got into a bag of meth before I got in front of them and act like I'm crazy. But I'm not.
I guess to wrap things up, I mean, to polish things off of our tour through corruption and scandal in the state of Ohio, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention two funny sex scandals. The first of which is from 2017. I know it's not of a recent vintage, but the case of Wes Goodman, a sort of a protege of fucking what's his name, Jim Jordan, a protege of Jim Jordan, who is like sort of a family values Republican who had his career undone because he was having sex with a man in his office.
Yeah, he was a rising Republican, family values from Cardington. Cardington's just a cursed place. I would never advise anybody to go to Cardington. But he was from Cardington, from a rich, politically connected family. One of those types. He'd been interning, was on the straight and narrow. He was going places, and legit got caught having sex with a man in his legislative office. And that's like a scandal you can get away with a lot in Ohio, you know, the Ohio legislature, but that's like pretty much dead to rights stuff. And then, oh, by the way, it turns out that he was well known. He was like sexually harassing pages. I mean, he was like a stone cold geeky freak. You know, like,
he was on that match slap tape. He was slapping it up in the Ohio State House.
So he took a ride for it. He ended up getting kicked out. The Speaker of the House at the time, Cliff Rosenberger, he's now also living as like an openly gay man. He resigned for his own FBI investigation scandal.
Not for being gay.
Yeah, but last I heard from that Speaker scandal was because he was traveling the world. He was an Instagram thotty. And then the FBI was like, how are you affording this on $95,000 a year? And he resigned.
Once again, it goes back to being bad at being corrupt.
Yeah. And Wes Goodman was, one of his top henchmen. And last I heard, he was selling suits at Brooks Brothers.
Ooh.
And he was involved in another scandal with Derek Marin, who's running for Congress right now against Marcy Kaptur. But last I heard that he went through conversion therapy. And he is back successfully, obviously. He prayed the gay away, and he is working as a youth minister in Cardington at some church connected with his family.
And then now, to show that we are, let's both sides the sex scandal here. We've got gay and straight, Democratic and Republican. Could you relate to us the saga of not just sort of on the down low politicians, but just normal heterosexual politicians who are getting honeypotted by Chinese spies in cars?
Yeah, so it's the story of Mayor Coleman. Right now we've got this mayor called Mayor Suburbs who got caught in red flex, red light traffic scandal, red-handed. We promoted him to mayor. But the mayor before that was a guy named Mayor Coleman. And he passed the character test, man. Like, he was just old school corrupt. He was smooth. He got stuff built, at least. That's the thing you could say about him, you know. And I used to wait at this kind of upscale restaurant in the Short North. And him, his wife, and their girlfriend would always come in every, like, Tuesday. He was a good tipper. You know, you'd see him out. He was a man of the town. Well, there was a Chinese spy called Fang Fang. That was her name. And she apparently had swooped up that Eric Swalwell out in California.
I think we might have mentioned this on the show before. If not, TrueAnon has covered this.
Yeah. Was like a well-known like honeypot artist and came to Columbus, and they caught poor Mayor Coleman. You know, he's divorced. He's the mayor. You know, he's on the wrong side of 50. Like, you know, it's...
all of a sudden there's like a sexy Chinese lady trying to pick you up. And you're like, what are you to do?
Yeah, it goes to the state legislature too. Like, these guys are so arrogant that they never see a problem with, like, why wouldn't this attractive young woman want to sleep with a state legislator or a mayor? And, if you gave me like 6 sex workers who knew how to hit, I could turn this state over overnight. And Coleman, FBI recorded him having sex with the Chinese spy in his car. I can't. I've been trying to catch him out in public because I just want to know, like, you're the mayor of a hustling and bustling city like Columbus. Where do you take a young Chinese woman to like go have sex in your car? And then afterwards, while they're getting dressed, she was like, why are you in, like, why are you having sex with me? You could have sex with a lot more interesting people. And she looked at him and goes, I'm trying to work on my English. and then so the FBI is like, okay, we should probably look into this guy. And then Mayor Coleman had it was some sweetheart deal with like a Chinese national. She was like some manufacturing person, and she bought his house for like twice the market value. And there were some other shady deals. And then the FBI started poking around this, and then he just resigned. He just quit. He was like, I'm out of here. Waited about a year, and then he came back, and he's like the top city. If you want to grease a project in Columbus and do something shady, you go to Mayor Coleman and you hire him, and he has a bunch of contracts in front of the city now, and he can get stuff done as an anonymous, non-elected member of society.
Oh, sorry, I forgot one other Ohio sex scandal. This concerns GOP Senate candidate. Bernie Moreno. He's the Trump-backed Senate candidate who's going to take on, or supposed to take on Sherrod Brown, or he lost the primary. What was going on with that?
He won.
Oh, he won the primary.
Yeah, it was a complete and total victory for Donald Trump. We are a Trump state, Trump Republican. Trump came through around his. It was very obvious. It was obvious it was always going to happen. Moreno dumped our sitting Secretary of State, who was ran on basically, I'm a troop. I was in Iraq for some reason. And, the guy that would have been good in the 1990s. And then Matt Dolan, who was like the old school country club Republican, had the support of like Les Wexner, Epstein's best friend. That's a whole nother wormhole.
Got his start in Columbus.
Jimmy Haslam, the corrupt owner of the Cleveland Browns, who bought his way out of federal prison. The old school club. And then you just had the Hogs with Bernie Moreno. Car salesman, Bitcoin freak. Trump threw his arm around him 2 days after that scandal broke. From what I was told, it was Libs of TikTok that originally tweeted that story and then deleted it.
Well, the story was that apparently Moreno, who is, a hardline opponent of all gay and trans rights.
He's good on gay people, but he is against the transgender.
So he's good on gay people, but against transgenders. But apparently he had a profile on the Adult Friend Finder website seeking men for one-on-one casual sex encounters.
Right. Yeah, like Nardo 4992, and the AP admitted they couldn't prove it was him. They found an intern to throw it under the bus. Me personally, my advice would be I'd be like, man, twinks are a hell of a drug. Let the man cast the first stone on that. But because of the culture that they existed in, they can't really do that. And Matt Dolan tried to make a play of it. They cut up some commercial where it looked like a newscast, actually reporting on it. And then Marino's camp, they saw it coming. I think they were all over it. They handled it about as well as you could. They hired the lawyer that bankrupted Gawker. R.I.P.
Charles Harder.
Same ones that went after me.
Yeah, they hired that guy, and he sent out a bunch of cease and desist, and was like, "This looks like a newscast. You can't do this. If you air this, we're gonna bankrupt your ass, just like I did Gawker." And it worked, and it kept a lot of that off the air. And once Trump came in and threw his arm around, he could have literally had sex on stage, and it wouldn't have mattered as long as Trump came out and threw the arm around him.
Well,
but yeah, it was. I don't know. It certainly didn't look good. The AP couldn't independently confirm it, but now he's going against Sherrod Brown. And I do know Sherrod's team, they wanted Moreno because they feel they can define him. These other guys had a record. They feel they can define him as a way. We'll see. I think personally he's cooked. It's going to be the fight of his electoral life.
Well, I don't know if I don't know if it's the men for men stuff that has him cooked, but in terms of defining him in a race against Sherrod Brown, this is a great headline that I think is perfect for that. This is from just early this month. Report: Bernie Moreno closed down local roads to test $3.4 million imported car. This is in 2015, Ohio Senate Republican candidate Bernie Moreno used taxpayer dollars to shut down local roads so he could take a joyride in an Aston Martin that he purchased for $2.3 million.
Yeah, and then stiffed the police department, as the story goes. Yeah, and and then there was some lawsuit where he stole money from his employees at a car dealership in Mercedes. which if you're selling cars, honestly, like whatever, like, I don't know. But you'll hear that a lot. Yeah. And then the New York Times is basically digging it. You know, his story is basically, my family was fleeing socialism. We came here, had nothing. I'm the American dream, da 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 da. And they're kind of like digging into his family history. And like, he's from a very well-to-do, connected political family from Colombia, who's like the Republicans behind the scenes were trying to say, you know, oh, he's like got cocaine money and that's why his parents had to leave. He got in bad with the cartel or something. Again, I would just run on that stuff. It would make him sound a lot cooler. Yeah, my daddy knew Pablo Escobar. What about it? Like, I'm up here selling Mercedes. Like, you can too. And they'll eat it up. I fully expect he will be the next senator of Ohio, and then we'll have JD Vance, because Sherrod Brown, it looks like he's going to go the Tim Ryan route and just run like, you know, I'm not that kind of Republican. Like, I'm not that kind of Democrat. I'm not going to get into the woke culture war stuff like da 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 da. And he's going to run tack to the right, race bait on China, and they're just going to, you know, why do I want a fake freak who's tied to Joe Biden, who's 24 points underwater in Ohio right now? Mm-hmm. Why would I want that when I can just get a stone cold geeky?
Get the real thing,
yeah.
Well, DJ Byrnes, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I think what we've learned today is that every state is unhappy in different ways, but corrupt in basically the same.
Yeah, come check us out at Ohio. We'd love to have you for a weekend.
Oh, we would love to return to Ohio. And to our listeners, please check out the Rooster. We'll have the link available to the Substack, but please check it out and support local independent journalism.
I've got one thing. If I get this episode out in time tomorrow night or today, Saturday, May 25th, I am helping a new publication, a music magazine out of New York, that we're having a fundraising party at Baby's All Right. Few good bands, including who I understand people are hyped for, which is just the symbol, and hosted by Joe Pera. So go out, Baby's All Right, Saturday, May 25th. I'll have a link to the tickets in the description.
All right, once again, thanks to DJ Byrnes of the Rooster for